All right, strap yourselves in because we're diving deep into one of the most, well, intense stories ever told. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going right to the source for this one. Genesis chapter 19, from the King James Version of the Bible, to unpack this tale of morality, hospitality, and some seriously tough choices.
What always gets me about this story is how it just throws you right into the deep end. Like you're right there in the thick of human nature.
Yeah.
A whole society right on the edge, facing divine judgment. And it makes you wonder, how would people act when they think all is lost?
Yeah, it really makes you think. Okay, so picture this. You're Lot, a righteous man, but you live in Sodom,
Oh, yeah.
a city with a, let's just say, a less than stellar reputation.
You can say that again.
Talk about an awkward dinner party.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But you know, Lot's position in all of this is really key. He's trying to hold on to his values in a place that seems to have completely abandoned them. If you ask me, it's like trying to stick to a vegan diet at a barbie competition.
Good luck with that. And then right into this pressure cooker of a situation. 2 angels show up at Lot's door. Now, you can't exactly tell heavenly visitors to come back later in this time period. No way.
Right.
Especially back then. Hospitality was a matter of life or death.
Absolutely. Back then, offering hospitality wasn't just good manners. It was a huge social and religious obligation. You had to do it. It was all about recognizing that any guest, no matter who they were,
Yeah.
had inherent dignity.
Right. But the men of Sodom, well, they clearly didn't get that memo. They surround Lot's house,
Oh, boy.
demanding he brings out the angels, that we may know them.
Ugh.
Talk about a hostile welcome wagon.
I know. And you know that phrase that we may know them? That's not just some polite conversation starter. It's a euphemism.
Right.
And even audiences way back then were shocked by the level of depravity it implied.
Wow.
That's where the story really takes a turn.
For the worse. And it gets even more intense from there. Lot. He gets desperate, wants to protect his guests. So what does he do?
Oh, no.
Offers his own virgin daughters to the mob instead. I mean, how do you even begin to process that?
Yeah, that moment is like cultures and values are just colliding. It's really hard for us today to really grasp. You have to remember this was a patriarchal society where a woman's life was completely controlled by men. Lot's offer. As awful as it sounds to us now, it was the brutal reality of his time. I mean, it really raises the question, how far would you go to fulfill that duty of hospitality?
That's the question, isn't it? Really makes you wonder what was going on in Lot's mind. Was it just pure desperation? Or did he really see his daughters as less important than his guests?
It's hard to say.
It's a disturbing look into how complicated moral decisions can be, especially when you're in extreme situations.
For sure. And we can't forget about the mob either. Their rage is blinding. They've lost all sense of basic decency. It makes you wonder if they even cared about the angels, or if they were just a society that had gone so far off the rails that they'd completely lost their moral compass.
Yeah, you have to wonder about that. And so the mob, well, they're fueled by, let's just call it enthusiasm.
Sure.
And they're trying to break down the door. That's when things take a bit of a supernatural turn. The angels, boom! They strike the whole mob with blindness. Now they're all stumbling around like they just left a rave at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow. That's a huge turning point. A big reminder that some things are just beyond our control. But it also shows the idea of divine justice, that there are consequences. When a society pushes too far, it's like the universe is saying, okay, that's enough.
I like that. Enough is enough. And the angels, they know things are about to get, well, biblical in the most literal sense of the word.
Oh, yeah.
So they tell Lot and his whole family to get out of there, run. They make it crystal clear. Sodom's days are numbered.
Wow.
I said the cry of them had reached the big guy upstairs.
That's heavy.
It really is.
But it also shows that divine judgment, it isn't random. It's a response to people behaving badly over and over. It's the breaking point. When a society's morals are just torn apart, it reminds us that actions have consequences, not just for us, but for everyone.
That's a great point. Okay, so try to imagine this. You're Lot. You've got your wife, your daughters, and you're all booking it out of Sodom as the sun's coming up. But then your wife, she just can't help herself. She takes one last look back, and bam, salt lick.
Wow.
So what's the takeaway there?
That image, Lot's wife becoming a pillar of salt, it's powerful and haunting. It could be about disobedience, sure, but I think it's more about us as humans and how we struggle to let go of the past. Even when it's bad for us, it's like we're drawn to what's familiar, even when it's going to burn us.
I see what you mean. It's like she was holding on to that corrupt life
Right.
more than the unknown future she was running towards.
Exactly.
Makes you think about the things we all cling to.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Are we moving forward with faith, ready to embrace something new? Or are we stuck looking back, full of regret and longing for what we left behind? It's like a deep dive into why we change and why letting go is so hard. And, as we're going deeper into this story, we can't forget about the historical and cultural side of things. It's like we're trying to understand Shakespeare without knowing anything about Elizabethan England.
That's true. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama
Yeah.
and totally miss what was going on back then.
Exactly. Like hospitality, for example. In the ancient Near East, it was a matter of survival. It wasn't just being polite. It was about protecting travelers from the dangers of the desert and keeping things running smoothly in society. If you messed with those customs, things could get really bad.
Really bad.
Yeah.
So when we look at Lot's offer, knowing all that, it's even more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
He's not just trying to protect his guests, he's trying to stop a blood feud. That could wipe out his whole family.
It's like he's playing a really high-stakes game, social chess. And he's making a desperate move, trying to save his family's honor, even if it means making a terrible sacrifice.
Right. It's scary to think that even good intentions can lead to awful choices when you're trapped in a system like that.
I agree. And don't forget about the power dynamics. The men of Sodom, they're a mob, a force of their own. They can intimidate anyone, even someone like Lot, who's respected in the community.
They're not messing around. That mob mentality, it's something we see throughout history. It's the danger of groupthink,
Right.
where your own sense of right and wrong gets lost in the crowd.
It makes you think, did
Right.
anyone in that mob even stop to think about what they were doing? Or were they just caught up in all that anger?
Good question.
It reminds us we have to think for ourselves and do what's right, even when everyone else is doing something wrong.
Especially then. And speaking of responsibility, the whole idea of divine judgment, it's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is.
Was destroying Sodom and Gomorrah a punishment for their sins? Or was it a warning for all of us?
That is the question. People have been debating that for centuries. Theologians, scholars, everyone. Some people think it really happened, a historical event, God showing his anger against those who broke his laws.
I can see that.
Others think it's symbolic, a story, a warning about what happens when we lose our morals and when there's no justice in society.
Interesting. It's like this story is a test. It shows us what we believe about justice, morality, and if there's something bigger than us controlling everything.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
what about Lot's wife? Turning into a pillar of salt. It's a pretty intense image.
I know. You can't forget it once you hear it. What do you think it means?
Well, it could be a punishment for disobeying,
Yeah.
like a warning not to look back when you're running from danger.
Right.
But I think it's deeper than that. It's about nostalgia, wanting things to be the way they used to be, even when they were bad for you.
Like she's stuck,
Yep.
trapped between the past and the future.
Yeah. Afraid to let go of what she knows and afraid to face what's ahead. It's a powerful image of the struggles we all face when we're trying to move on in life.
It really is.
And then there's what happens after. Lot and his daughters hiding in a cave. And their actions, well, let's just say they raise a lot of questions.
I mean, the whole thing with Lot's daughters, getting him drunk and,
Right.
you know,
It's hard to understand.
it's hard to see Lot as a good guy after that.
It's like everything they went through twisted their sense of right and wrong,
Maybe.
as bad as it was. You could also see it as a desperate attempt to make sure their family line continued in a world that had been destroyed.
I guess when everything falls apart, it's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, what would I do in that situation? Would I be able to stay true to myself?
It's a challenge to examine our own values and recognize that what happens around us can influence the choices we make.
And it's interesting. The sons born from all of that, they become the ancestors of the Moabites and the Ammonites, two nations that would later fight against Israel.
Wow. That adds another layer to the whole story. It suggests that what we do, good or bad, can have an impact for generations, shaping entire countries and their futures.
It makes you think about responsibility, how
Yeah.
the past affects the present.
Right. Are we bound by what our ancestors did? Can we escape the cycles of violence and revenge that history throws at us? It's a big question. Makes us think about our own place in the grand scheme of things.
You know, it's amazing how this story of Sodom and Gomorrah, a story that's thousands of years old, still feels so relevant.
Yeah.
It's like we're still trying to figure out the same things, good and evil, justice. What happens when we make bad choices?
It's true. What I find fascinating is how this story, it's like a touchstone across different cultures. Throughout history, we see it everywhere. Art, Literature, music, even in the debates we have today about social justice and morality, it's like this story. It's holding up a mirror to humanity,
Yeah.
making us look at ourselves and confront the fact that we're capable of both good and evil.
It really does. It makes you wonder, are we really any different from the people of Sodom and Gomorrah?
Right.
Have we learned from their mistakes? Or are we going to make the same ones and end up destroying ourselves?
Those are the tough questions. But they're the questions this story makes us ask. Think about it. Hospitality, justice, the impact of our actions. Those things are just as important today as they were back then.
They are.
Look around. We're having debates about immigration, welcoming refugees. We're talking about inequality, the need for change.
Yeah.
We're worried about climate change. What's going to happen to our planet?
It's all connected.
It
It's
is.
like this story, a warning from the past,
Yeah.
telling us to wake up, learn from history, make a better future.
It's telling us to look at our own values. Think about the
Oh.
systems we live in and ask ourselves, are we making the world a better place? Or are we repeating the same mistakes that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah?
One thing that really got to me was the idea that things aren't always black and white.
Okay.
There's a lot of gray area. Nobody in this story is perfect.
Right.
They're all complex people making tough decisions in really difficult situations.
That's what makes this story so real, so human. It doesn't give us easy answers or tell us who's right and who's wrong. It makes us look at the messiness of human behavior and realize that even good people can make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds us that judging others is never simple and that we need to have empathy and understanding, even when we disagree with someone.
It's a good reminder,
Yeah.
especially these days when it's so easy to get angry and judge people.
Absolutely.
This story tells us to calm down,
Yeah.
look at the big picture, try to understand, and be a little more compassionate.
I like that. A little less judgment, a little more compassion.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that things are complicated. There's more than one side to every story. And if we want to find solutions, we need to try to understand each other.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all of this?
That's a good question. I think it's this. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not just a warning. It's a call to action. It's telling us that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place.
I agree.
We can choose to do good, fight for justice, be kind to each other, and build a better future. Even small acts of kindness and courage can make a difference. We're not just watching history happen. We're a part of it.
That's a powerful thought. So listener, as we close out this deep dive, we encourage you to think about everything we've talked about today. How can you bring these ideas of hospitality and justice into your own life? What choices can you make to create a world where everyone feels welcome and cared for? The story of Sodom and Gomorrah might be old, but its message is timeless, and we need to hear it now more than ever.
I agree. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,
Yeah.
and keep searching for wisdom wherever you can find it.